Before Adam Zivo explains what is the love affair between Trump and Putin, please donate to keep this channel on air because, particularly with an election coming up and a new government, you need to hear the unvarnished truth. Adam Zivo is a columnist for the National Post, usually talks about fentanyl, but he also has other expertise. Thanks for coming on, and will you explain to me? I mean, actually, I had to admire Trudeau the other day when he gave a speech. He said, Putin is a bloodthirsty dictator. Trump is the leader of the world's greatest democracy. And they have this love affair going on.
Well, we have to look at the larger context here. So after, the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, neoconservatism as a foreign policy ideology was largely discredited, and American conservatives were unable to come up with a new foreign policy vision to replace it. Right. And so in the absence of a new ideology, they essentially subsumed their foreign policy to their domestic culture wars. What that means is that they're willing to ally with hostile states if they perceive those hostile states as being allies in the war against wokeness, right?
What about some theories that Trump is trying to separate China and Russia? I mean, they're very close.
I mean, he can try, but I think that's moronic. China obviously has a lot of aggression towards the United States. Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin have been aligned for decades. Yes. For many years, not necessarily for decades. But there's no reason for Russia to turn against China at this point. They work together very well. At this point,
but could there be in the future? Is that what Trump is trying to do? Plant that seed?
I mean,
what else is he trying to do?
The only way you could really wedge China and Russia is if you had a dispute over Eastern Siberia, which is something that was emerging over the past few years, with China referring to some far eastern Russian cities by Chinese names.
As theirs, yes.
Yeah, because southeastern Siberia used to be Chinese land until the Russians took it in the very early 20th century. But China isn't really pursuing any annexation of Eastern Siberia right now, and I don't think it would if it believed that doing so would turn Russia into an enemy. So I don't see any realistic future where China and Russia are opposed.
Now, what is NATO going to think? What is Europe going to think of the United States when they are, playing footsies with the Russians?
Well, let's say if something like this were to happen, right, and the United States were to fully ally with Russia and to essentially abandon Europe. So Europe would have to then, of course, turn against the United States, because there's no way that they would accept Eastern Europe being given as a meal to Russia.
Absolutely.
And that could also look like an alliance with China, to be honest. We could have a Chinese-European axis against a American-Russian one if the Russians and the Chinese do have conflict between the two of them.
So really, the bottom line of what you're saying is that Trump is doing what he does so well. He's in there stirring it up, throwing things up in the air and see where it lands.
He is, but I think this is grossly reckless, right? And this isn't a video game. This means that thousands of people, tens of thousands, 100,000 people could die.
Adam Zivo, let's hope not. But thank you very much for that. Good perspective. 3 minutes. To those of you who have subscribed and donated, a heartfelt thank you. You're keeping us on the air. If you're watching and you haven't, please try to do so, because 4 years ago we started this show because there needed to be independent analysis. Now more than ever, with the Online Harms Act. Once that gets into law, it's been passed once by the House, there are going to be hundreds of bureaucrats censoring the news in Canada, censoring this show. We need to keep it on the air. Thanks for your support.